At 32, on the cusp of blowing out the candles on a birthday cake I was funding at an exclusive restaurant, happiness felt impossibly distant. Instead, my mother leaned in, her heavy perfume stifling, and whispered the accusation that I was simply jealous of your brother. Something inside me finally fractured. Years of underwriting expenses, of countless personal sacrifices, of endless justifications for his financial dependence. It all culminated in that single cutting phrase. My voice leveled despite the frantic beat of my heart, I responded, "Then let him pay his own bills." They had no idea that within hours, I would systematically dismantle every utility bill, credit card payment, and rent check I had been covering for years. If you've ever found yourself the unwitting benefactor of a relative's perpetual need, you know the feeling. Let me share how I finally reclaimed my financial life after years of being the family's personal bank. Growing up in Chicago with my younger brother, Ryan, was largely idyllic. There was a 5-year age gap between us. I'm 32 now, he's 27. But as children, that difference didn't significantly impact our bond. Our middle-class neighborhood offered tree-lined streets and modest homes where we spent hours on our bikes, only returning when the streetlights flickered on. Both mom and dad worked, managing to cover essentials but with little left over for luxuries. From early on, our fundamental natures diverged. Academics came effortlessly to me. I earned straight A's with minimal struggle, perpetually lost in a book. Ryan, by contrast, found school a challenge but possessed a captivating charm that teachers and peers alike found irresistible. He navigated life with a winning smile, skilled at talking his way into or out of any situation, while I, for amusement, calculated compound interest during math class. Despite these differences, we shared a close connection. I'd patiently help him with his homework, and he'd fiercely protect me from the boys who teased me about my studiousness. We confided secrets under makeshift blanket forts, sealed our bond with safety pin blood oaths, much to mom's dismay when discovered, and stood united against neighborhood bullies. Everything shifted when I was 14 and Ryan was 9. Our parents' arguments, previously whispered after bedtime, had escalated over months, marked by sudden tense silences upon our entry into a room. Then came the day Dad packed his bags, promised to visit soon, and drove away. Mom grieved for weeks. That's when I started earning my own money, first through weekend babysitting gigs, then shelving books at the local library after school. By 16, I juggled 20 hours a week at a coffee shop with maintaining my academic performance. The income was modest but provided crucial support for mom with groceries and allowed me to purchase my own school supplies. Ryan, meanwhile, remained his characteristic self, affable, unburdened by worry, seemingly confident that things would simply work out. When Northwestern University offered me a full academic scholarship for finance, it felt like a profound affirmation of all those evenings spent studying instead of socializing. The campus was a convenient train ride away, so I chose to commute, saving on housing costs. Between classes, I gained practical experience interning at Bridgewater Financial, starting with coffee runs and spreadsheet organization. Upon graduation, they extended an offer for a junior analyst position. 5 years of dedicated 60-hour workweeks, foregone vacations, and persistent networking culminated in my promotion to senior financial advisor. My clients entrusted me with significant aspects of their futures, a responsibility I never took lightly. My small apartment, modest yet entirely my own, became my personal haven, a tangible result of careful saving and planning. My initial financial assistance to Ryan felt like a simple act of support. During his sophomore year at Illinois State, he called, his voice edged with panic. Mom couldn't cover his textbooks that semester. $800 later, I felt a sense of satisfaction, even pride, in helping. He was effusively grateful, vowing to repay me once he graduated and secured a lucrative marketing role. Those initial small loans and gifts gradually morphed into a recurring pattern. Birthday presents far exceeding my own, unexpected car repairs for his aging Honda, the security deposit for his first apartment after college. Each time came the earnest promise of prompt repayment, a promise that invariably went unfulfilled. By 31, I had advanced to team leader at Bridgewater. My investment portfolio was growing steadily, though perhaps not as rapidly as it could have been. Still, I decided my 32nd birthday warranted a proper celebration, the first time in memory that our entire family, along with a few close friends and even my rarely seen uncle from Dad's side, would gather. Lystro, a restaurant I had admired for years, its menu a subject of aspirational glances, had just earned a Michelin star. Reservations were notoriously difficult, but I secured a table for 2 months in advance, putting down a $500 deposit and feeling a genuine thrill upon confirming the reservation. The week prior, I invested hours searching for the perfect birthday dress, eventually settling on a deep blue one that complemented my eyes. I scheduled a salon appointment, splurging on highlights and a professional blowout. This birthday, I resolved, would be different. A celebration of my accomplishments surrounded by loved ones. Ryan had called 3 times that week, each conversation bubbling with excitement about an amazing gift he claimed to have for me. "You're going to flip, sis," he promised. After years marked by forgotten presents or last-minute gift cards, his enthusiasm was surprisingly infectious. Perhaps I allowed myself to hope he was finally maturing. Perhaps this birthday would indeed signal a new chapter for us both. 6 months before my birthday, Ryan lost his job at Vertex Media. It was due to restructuring, he explained over beers at my apartment. His junior content creator position had been eliminated, but he was unfazed. "The job market is hot right now," he assured me, scrolling through listings on his phone. "I'll find something better in 2 weeks, tops." When his landlord threatened eviction after the second missed rent payment, I offered to help, just until you're back on your feet. The $1,800 monthly rent for his trendy downtown apartment was a significant sum, but I could manage it. "You're literally saving my life," he'd said, hugging me tightly, promising repayment with interest once he landed a new position. Weeks stretched into months. Job applications were supposedly submitted, interviews allegedly scheduled, yet Ryan's Instagram feed chronicled a lifestyle of rooftop bars, music festivals, and weekend trips to Lake Michigan. When I gently inquired about his job search over Sunday dinner at Mom's, she quickly intervened before he could respond. "The job market is brutal for his generation," she stated, refilling his wine glass. "And Ryan needs to find something that truly values his creative talents. He can't just accept any position." My brother nodded solemnly, texting under the table. Ryan's girlfriend, Amber, added another layer of complication. Tall, stylish, and seemingly perpetually between modeling gigs, she cultivated expensive tastes despite no visible income. Yet, each time I saw her, she sported new designer sunglasses while Ryan complained about his financial woes. 3 months before my birthday, Ryan called at midnight, his voice tight with panic. His car had been repossessed. "I meant to make the payments," he swore, "but things have been so tight with rent and everything." How, he argued, could he possibly get to interviews without reliable transportation? The bus system in his area was unreliable, and ride-sharing would be prohibitively expensive long-term. 2 days later, I co-signed for a certified pre-owned Audi at a 9% interest rate. "Nothing fancy," Ryan had insisted, though it was significantly nicer than my 5-year-old Toyota. "Just reliable transportation so I can get back on my feet." The salesman's subtle smirk as I wrote the down payment check was not lost on me. Around this time, I began to realize Ryan had been accessing my digital subscriptions and phone plan for years. The discoveries were gradual, unfamiliar shows in my streaming services, continue watching list, playlists I hadn't created, unexplained spikes in data usage. When I finally confronted him, he seemed genuinely puzzled by my concern. "We're family," he shrugged. "I thought that stuff was just understood." Then came his sheepish confession that he was also struggling with utility payments. Would I mind adding his electric, gas, and internet bills to my autopay accounts? "Just until things turn around," he promised for what felt like the 10th time. The week of my birthday, Ryan texted, asking to borrow $200 for a special gift he wanted to get me. The irony was stark, but I transferred the money anyway. What was another $200 at this point? At work, my colleague Jessica noticed I had started bringing lunch instead of joining the team's weekly outings to the sushi place downstairs. "Budget cuts at home," she joked, unknowingly hitting close to the truth. I laughed it off, attributing it to a new fitness regimen rather than admitting I was meticulously tracking every dollar. My friend Taylor, however, was less easily deceived. Over coffee the weekend before my birthday, she commented on the dark circles under my eyes. "You look stressed, Mel." Is everything okay with work? When I hesitated, her gaze sharpened. Is it Ryan again? What's he done now? I quickly deflected, unwilling to admit I had checked my credit score for the first time in months and found it had dropped 40 points. The credit card balance I had always paid in full now carried a revolving balance, interest accruing while I covered my brother's expenses. The morning of my birthday, Ryan called asking if he could bring Amber to the dinner I was paying for. She's practically family, he argued when I paused, and she's really been looking forward to trying Lystro. I reluctantly agreed, mentally adjusting my carefully calculated budget for the evening. An hour later, Mom called. Just checking that you ordered chocolate ganache for the cake, she said. You know it's Ryan's favorite. When I reminded her I preferred vanilla bean, there was a brief pause. Well, but chocolate would make everyone happy, don't you think? While still on the phone, I changed the order, incurring an additional $50 charge from the bakery for the last-minute request. As I prepared for the evening, unwelcome memories of past birthdays surfaced. Ryan's 21st at an exclusive downtown club, where I covered the $2,000 table minimum. His 25th, a weekend getaway at a beach resort I organized and funded. Each year, despite not being the one celebrating, my brother somehow received gifts more elaborate and expensive than anything I received. Ryan's just starting out, Mom would explain, presenting him with the latest gaming console or a designer watch. You're so successful, you don't need anything special. My presents were typically practical items, kitchen gadgets, business books, while Ryan often received things from my own wish list that I couldn't justify purchasing for myself. My apartment offered a true picture of my financial reality. It was stylish but modest, furnished with pieces I had acquired gradually over years. The dining table was a thrift store find I refinished myself. My comfortable sofa was a high-quality floor sample purchased at a significant discount. I lived comfortably but with careful intention, tracking every expense on a detailed spreadsheet on my laptop. That spreadsheet had a separate tab labeled Ryan, a habit from my accounting days that now revealed a deeply uncomfortable truth. Over the past 2 years alone, I had spent $42,000 on my brother rent, car payments, miscellaneous cash transfers, his share of family gifts, utility bills, even grocery deliveries when he was between paychecks. The total made my stomach tighten. My credit card statement showed a $5,000 balance carried over for 3 months. The first time in my adult life, I hadn't paid it in full. The minimum payments were manageable, but the accumulating interest felt like money dissolving into thin air. A practice I routinely lectured my clients against. I arrived at Lystro 30 minutes early, determined to ensure everything was perfect. The staff escorted me to our private dining area, a space with exposed brick and soft, twinkling string lights. The table settings were elegant yet understated, exactly as I had envisioned. Mom arrived 15 minutes late, air kissing my cheek before settling into her chair. I couldn't help but notice her new purse, a soft burgundy leather Prada I immediately recognized from my own online browsing history, part of my someday wish list. When I complimented it, she beamed. Ryan helped me pick it out, she said. He has such good taste. Ryan and Amber arrived 45 minutes past our reservation time, offering no apologies. My brother gave me a quick hug before launching into a story about a brief shopping trip that had apparently caused their tardiness. Amber interrupted to display her new ankle boots, the red soles prominent as she extended her leg. We're so broke it's not even funny, she lamented, though her outfit likely cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. But these were 60% off, so practically a steal. Ryan nodded enthusiastically, his arm around her waist. When the waiter came for drink orders, my brother theatrically patted his pockets before looking at me with that familiar, sheepish expression. I think I forgot my wallet at home. Can you spot me? I'll Venmo you. It was the Venmo that never arrived, like countless others before. Throughout appetizers, I couldn't ignore the watch on Ryan's wrist. It looked new, stainless steel with a distinctive blue face I knew retailed for at least 4 figures. When I asked about it, he quickly changed the subject, pulling his sleeve down. Mom lavished attention on Ryan's every story, laughing too loudly at his jokes, often interrupting me mid-sentence when I attempted to share news about my recent promotion. That's nice, honey, she'd say dismissively before turning back to my brother. Ryan, tell everyone about that client you almost landed before the layoffs. When someone suggested a family photo, Mom immediately positioned Ryan in the center, physically moving me towards the edge of the frame with a firm hand on my shoulder. "The lighting's better over here," she explained when I subtly resisted. The scene triggered a childhood memory, vivid enough to tighten my chest. Christmas morning when I was 12, opening the modest earrings I had specifically requested, while Ryan unwrapped the expensive gaming console our parents claimed they couldn't afford. What Mom didn't know was that my babysitting savings had mysteriously vanished from my drawer that week, exactly the amount needed to cover the difference for Ryan's gift. I never mentioned it, seeing his sheer joy. As the main courses arrived, my headache intensified. Ryan was showing Amber something on his phone, both of them laughing. "The Airbnb for next weekend," he explained when he noticed my glance. "A little getaway to Michigan wine country. You deserve a vacation after all your stress," Mom added, patting his hand. "Job hunting is exhausting." Neither mentioned the thousands of dollars in rent I was currently covering while they planned wine tastings. Ryan's landlord came up when my friend inquired about his apartment. "That jerk is being impossible about the late rent again," Ryan complained, rolling his eyes. "Threatening eviction over a couple of weeks. Some people have no compassion." I took a large sip of wine, avoiding Taylor's knowing glance from across the table. The couple of weeks was actually 3 months of rent payments, sitting in my bank's pending transactions scheduled to process at midnight. The arrival of the birthday cake should have been the evening's highlight. 3 tiers of chocolate ganache with delicate gold-dusted decorations, exactly as Mom had insisted. Lystro's pastry chef had created a masterpiece, worthy of a magazine cover rather than my understated celebration. As servers placed the cake at the table's center, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Everyone gathered around, faces illuminated by the soft glow of approaching candles. Perhaps this moment could redeem the evening, a chance to finally feel special on my birthday. Ryan leaned towards Amber, whispering something that made her giggle and nod enthusiastically. I caught fragments about the lake house and jet skis for sure, clearly elaborating on their upcoming weekend plans. My brother's hand casually rested on her thigh, his new watch catching the candlelight. "Ryan deserves a nice vacation," Mom commented, apparently overhearing. "After all the stress he's been under with the job situation, sometimes you need to spend a little to recharge." She said this while I was mentally calculating the extra hours I would need to work to cover next month's combined expenses. The restaurant staff gathered around, candles fully lit, ready for the traditional birthday song. Friends and family joined voices in a melody that should have evoked joy but instead felt hollow, disconnected from the reality of the past few hours, the past few years. As the song concluded and I leaned forward to make a wish, Mom's voice, soft yet piercingly clear, came from beside my ear. "You're jealous of your brother," she whispered, her smile unwavering for the benefit of onlookers. "You always have been." In that instant, every sacrifice I had ever made flashed before me with perfect clarity. Working through high school while Ryan enjoyed extracurricular activities, commuting to college to save money while he lived in dorms, taking overnight shifts at the financial firm to prove my dedication, while he partied through his early 20s. The vacations never taken, investments postponed, dreams deferred. All part of my role as the responsible one, the supportive one, the one who could always be depended upon when bills came due. Something solidified within me, a sudden absolute certainty that nothing, no amount of money, support, or sacrifice, would ever fundamentally alter the dynamic that had defined our family for decades. Ryan would forever be the golden child, and I would perpetually be expected to subsidize his comfort at my own expense. "Then let him pay his own bills," I replied, my voice soft but perfectly steady. Mom blinked, confusion clouding her face as the full implication of my words registered. Ryan looked up from his conversation with Amber, sensing the abrupt shift in the atmosphere. "Excuse me?" Mom asked, her smile now strained. I set my napkin down carefully beside my plate. I repeated, my voice gaining quiet strength. "Let Ryan pay his own bills, all of them. Starting tonight." "Mel, what are you talking about?" Ryan laughed nervously, glancing around the table where conversations had abruptly ceased. "Your rent, Ryan," I listed, my voice remaining calm, each word precise despite the whirlwind of emotion churning beneath. $1,800 monthly for the past 6 months. Your car payment, $720. Your phone bill on my family plan. Your Netflix, Hulu, Spotify Premium. The utilities you couldn't manage, electric, gas, internet. The credit card I added you to as an authorized user. The loans that were never repaid. The sheer accumulation of it hung in the air. I'm shutting down every payment starting tonight. Amber's jaw dropped, her eyes wide as they darted between Ryan and me. You pay all his bills? She asked, genuine shock in her voice. All of them. She's exaggerating, Ryan said quickly, his familiar charm attempting to reassert itself like a broken switch. Mel helped out temporarily while I'm between jobs. It's not a big deal, right, sis? $42,000 in the past 2 years, I replied. The figures from my spreadsheet burned into my memory. That's not temporary, Ryan. And it's not helping out. It's enabling dependency. Melissa Harper, Mom hissed, her public facade finally cracking. This is completely inappropriate. You're making a scene on your birthday of all days. Yes, it is my birthday, I agreed, slowly rising from my chair. And for once, I'm giving myself a gift that truly matters, financial independence. For all of us. You don't mean this, Mom said, reaching for my hand. You're upset about something, but we can discuss it privately, not here, not like this. I absolutely mean it, I stated, pulling my hand away. I've covered every expense, made every sacrifice, and received nothing but expectations for more. I'm done. Ryan's face had lost its easy confidence, panic rising in his eyes as the reality of my words sank in. But the rent is due next week, he stammered. And the car payment. You can't just. I can, I interrupted, and I am. You're 27 years old, Ryan. It's time to pay your own bills. The cake sat untouched between us, candles melting into the frosting, wishes left unmade, the intended celebration abandoned. I reached for my purse, placed 3 crisp $100 bills on the table to cover my share of the dinner, and walked out of my own birthday party without a backward glance. Behind me, I heard Mom calling my name, Ryan's protests rising in volume, but I did not turn around. The night air felt clean and cool against my skin as I walked to my car, ignoring the insistent buzzing of my phone in my purse. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected pierce through the anger and hurt, relief. The drive home was a blur of passing streetlights and disembodied voices from the talk radio. Anything to silence the competing voices in my own head. Guilt wrestled with liberation, uncertainty with a burgeoning resolve. By the time I parked in my assigned spot, my hands had stopped shaking, replaced by a quiet determination I barely recognized. Inside my apartment, I went directly to my laptop. The familiar glow of the screen illuminated my living room as I logged into my online banking portal. Ryan's financial entanglements with me were extensive, requiring a methodical dismantling. First, the automatic rent payments to Highland Property Management. I navigated to recurring transfers, located the $1,800 monthly payment noted, Ryan Harper Rent, and clicked Cancel. A warning popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Without hesitation, I clicked Yes. Next came the utilities, electric, gas, internet, each requiring separate logins to different provider portals. I systematically removed my payment information and initiated service transfers back to the account holder. Please note that service may be interrupted if alternate payment arrangements are not made within 3 business days, one website cautioned. I took screenshots of each cancellation from my records. The phone plan was trickier. Ryan had been on my family plan for 7 years, his data usage consistently consuming our shared limits. I logged into the carrier website, removed him as an authorized user, and initiated the process to transfer his number to a separate account. User will need to establish their own payment method within 5 days to maintain service. The confirmation read. The credit card company required a phone call, despite the late hour. I need to remove an authorized user immediately and request a new card for the primary account holder, I explained to the representative named Marcus. He asked no questions, handling the request efficiently with a professionalism I deeply appreciated. An email to Ryan's landlord was also necessary. This letter serves as formal notification that effective immediately, I am terminating all financial responsibility for tenant Ryan Harper at 1420 Lakeview Apartments, Unit 307. Any existing automatic payments from my accounts should be considered unauthorized after today's date. By 2 a.m., I had systematically dismantled every financial connection to my brother. Each cancellation brought a strange mixture of anxiety and profound relief, like cutting away heavy anchors I hadn't fully acknowledged were dragging me down. The final task was updating my budget spreadsheet, removing the Ryan categories entirely. The difference was instantly apparent. Suddenly, my monthly cash flow showed a significant surplus, rather than a constant deficit. I stared at the revised figures, a weight lifting from my shoulders that I had carried for so long. I had forgotten what it felt like to stand straight. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in years, waking with sunlight streaming through blinds I had forgotten to close in my focused state the night before. My phone displayed the aftermath: 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 16 email notifications. The communications followed a predictable pattern. Ryan's messages evolved from confusion, "What happened last night?" to anger, "You can't just cut me off without warning," to panic, "The landlord called about rent being canceled," to begging, "Please just cover this month while I figure things out." Mom's voicemails alternated between guilt trips, "How could you embarrass your brother like that?" and thinly veiled threats, "If you don't fix this immediately, don't expect to be welcome at family gatherings." Amber had taken their grievances public, her social media filled with vague posts about toxic family members and showing true colors. Several mutual acquaintances messaged, asking for details, having clearly only seen one side of the story. Surprisingly, a text from Connor, Ryan's college roommate, offered unexpected support. "Been waiting years for someone to finally make Ryan grow up," he wrote. "Tough love but necessary. Stay strong, Melissa." After making coffee and taking a long cleansing shower, I made one final financial decision: changing the locks on my apartment. The spare key I had given Ryan for emergencies only had mysteriously been used whenever I was working late, evidenced by missing food and occasionally borrowed clothes or electronics. The locksmith arrived by noon, efficiently replacing the deadbolt while making small talk about the unseasonably warm weather. $300 later, I had new keys and a reinforced sense of my own boundaries. Monday morning, I scheduled a meeting with my own financial advisor. It was a humbling experience for someone who professionally advised others. Barbara listened without judgment as I explained the situation, then helped me map out a recovery plan for my depleted savings and unnecessary credit card debt. "You're in better shape than you think," she assured me after reviewing my revised budget. 6 months of disciplined spending, and you'll be right back on track toward your long-term goals. That Friday night, a startling realization struck me as I browsed restaurant options online. I could afford dinner out again. Nothing extravagant, but a meal at the neighborhood bistro I had loved before Ryan's financial crises began consuming my budget. The simple pleasure of ordering without mentally calculating how it would impact my ability to cover my brother's car payment felt revolutionary. The real test arrived the following Wednesday. I was in the middle of a client meeting when our receptionist interrupted with an urgent message. Ryan was in the lobby, demanding to see me immediately. According to Sophia at the front desk, he was becoming increasingly agitated, raising his voice about family emergencies and being abandoned. Excusing myself from the meeting, I found Ryan pacing the polished marble floors of our reception area, looking disheveled in a way I had never seen him. His eyes were red-rimmed, his normally perfectly styled hair unwashed. "You need to fix this," he said immediately, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. "They're going to shut off the electricity tomorrow, and the landlord has started eviction proceedings." "This isn't funny anymore, Melissa." "I'm at work," I replied calmly, acutely aware of the audience his outburst had attracted. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "Where is the place, then?" he demanded, his voice rising further. "You won't answer my calls, won't respond to texts. What am I supposed to do?" "You're supposed to pay your own bills," I stated, maintaining eye contact despite his increasing agitation. "With what money?" he nearly shouted. "You know I don't have a job." "That's a problem you need to solve," I replied, signaling discreetly to our security guard who had approached, alerted by the disturbance. "I can recommend some employment agencies if you'd like." The look of utter betrayal on his face was almost enough to break my resolve. Almost. Security approached, professionally asking Ryan to lower his voice or continue the conversation elsewhere. When he refused, they escorted him to the lobby elevators, his protests echoing until the doors closed. My colleagues were surprisingly supportive. Several stopped by my office later to check if I was okay. Jessica brought coffee and admitted she had been worried about me for months. "You seem stretched so thin," she said. "Whatever that was about, you handled it with more grace than most people could have." That weekend was the first in recent memory without a financial emergency from Ryan. No urgent calls about overdrawn accounts or unexpected expenses. The silence felt strange but profoundly liberating, like finally learning to breathe again after being submerged for too long. 1 week after the birthday dinner debacle, Mom hosted a family dinner at her house. I wasn't invited, but my cousin Sophia called afterward to fill me in. According to her, Ryan had dominated the evening with complaints about my sudden betrayal and abandonment when he needed me most. Mom, Sophia reported, had fully supported his version, portraying me as cruel and unreasonable. "I just thought you should know what they're saying," Sophia said awkwardly. "It doesn't sound like the cousin I know." "It's not the full story," I acknowledged, grateful for her call, "but I'm not going to defend myself to people who aren't interested in both sides." The following day, I made 2 important calls. The first was to a therapist recommended by Barbara, my financial advisor. Dr. Eliza Coleman specialized in family dynamics and boundary issues, terms I would have dismissed as psychobabble months earlier, but now recognized as precisely what I needed. Our first session was primarily intake, but even explaining the situation aloud to an objective professional brought immense clarity. "It sounds like you've been in a caretaking role far beyond what's reasonable between siblings," she observed. "That creates patterns that are painful to break, but continuing them causes harm to everyone involved." My second call was to Taylor, whom I had been avoiding since the birthday dinner. We met for coffee at a neutral location, where I finally shared the full extent of my financial support for Ryan over the years. "I suspected it was bad," she said, her eyes widening at the numbers. "But not this bad. Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Family loyalty? Embarrassment?" I admitted. "I'm not sure myself. It just became normal somehow." Over the next few weeks, I reconnected with friends I had drifted away from during years of financial constraints. Dinners out, weekend trips to local wineries, a theater subscription I had previously canceled to cover Ryan's car insurance. Small pleasures gradually returned to my life. 3 weeks after our confrontation, Ryan's landlord called. "Mr. Harper indicated you would be handling his outstanding balance," he began, sounding skeptical. When I explained the situation had changed, he sighed heavily. "Eviction proceedings will continue then. Just thought you should know." My mother's response was immediate and blistering. "How can you sleep at night knowing your brother will be homeless?" She demanded during a call I almost sent to voicemail. "This is cruel beyond words, Melissa." "He won't be homeless," I replied, maintaining the calm tone Dr. Coleman and I had practiced. "He has options. Get a job. Find a less expensive apartment. Ask one of his friends for help. I've sent him information about emergency rental assistance programs and employment agencies." "He's your brother," she said, as if this single fact overrode all other considerations. "Yes, and I love him," I agreed. "But continuing to financially enable him isn't loving. It's hurting both of us." An unexpected ally emerged in the form of Uncle James, Dad's brother, whom I rarely saw since my parents' divorce. He called out of the blue, having heard about the situation through the family grapevine. "Your father would be proud of you," he said, surprising me into momentary silence. "He always worried Ryan was being spoiled by your mother's approach. Setting boundaries is the hardest and kindest thing you could do right now." By the 2-month mark, my budget had begun a steady recovery. My first deposit back into savings, while modest, felt symbolically important. The credit card balance was shrinking rather than growing, and I had even started researching vacation options for later in the year, something I hadn't allowed myself to consider in ages. News about Ryan came indirectly at first, then more directly as his situation evolved. He had taken a job at a retail chain, his first steady employment in nearly a year. The position was entry-level and, according to Mom, beneath his qualifications, but it provided regular income. Amber broke up with him when the necessary lifestyle adjustments became apparent. Her Instagram feed now featured a new boyfriend with a luxury car and vacation photos from Cabo San Lucas. Ryan's social media went quiet around the same time. At a cousin's wedding I reluctantly attended, Mom maintained a cold distance, introducing me to distant relatives with minimal social courtesy. The extended family seemed confused by the palpable tension, some clearly having chosen sides based on the version of events they had heard. During the reception, I found myself seated with aunts and cousins who carefully avoided mentioning Ryan, until several glasses of wine loosened inhibitions. When Aunt Patricia finally asked what happened with that birthday dinner everyone's talking about, I offered a measured, factual account of the financial situation, devoid of emotional embellishment. "So, you've been supporting him completely?" Cousin Elise asked, clearly astonished. "All this time?" "Ryan made it sound like you occasionally helped with small expenses," Uncle David added, frowning. "Not that you were covering everything." By dessert, several family members who had been distant earlier approached with new understanding. "I would have done the same thing," Aunt Joan whispered, squeezing my hand. "It's about time someone in this family stood up to the golden child dynamic." The first direct communication from Ryan came via text message 3 months after our confrontation. "Got promoted to shift lead," it read. "Starting financial literacy class at community college next month. Not asking for anything. Just thought you should know." I stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. "Congratulations on both. That's genuinely great news, Ryan. I'm proud of you." No financial offers, no reopening of closed doors, but a careful acknowledgement of positive steps taken. At the family Easter gathering, tension remained, but it had evolved into something less volatile. Ryan arrived in a used Honda rather than the Audi that had been repossessed. He now lived with 2 roommates in an apartment that cost half his previous rent. Mom still made excuses for his circumstances, but Ryan himself seemed different, quieter, more thoughtful, occasionally making self-deprecating jokes about learning adulting the hard way. The most revealing moment came when someone asked about Christmas plans. In previous years, I had automatically been assigned responsibility for the most expensive elements: the prime rib dinner, the higher-end gifts, the alcohol. This time, when Mom began, "Melissa usually handles." Ryan interrupted. "Maybe we should all contribute what we can this year," he suggested, glancing my way briefly. "Split things more evenly." The silence that followed felt like a small victory. Not reconciliation, perhaps, but an acknowledgement of a changing dynamic that needed to change. 6 months after my 32nd birthday, my financial situation had transformed. The credit card debt was paid in full, my emergency fund replenished, and contributions to my retirement accounts back on schedule. Barbara, my financial advisor, noted with approval that I was back on track to meet my long-term goals without further detours. My apartment reflected the internal changes. I had repainted the living room a calm sage green, replacing the sterile beige, and new bookshelves proudly displayed the collection I had accumulated but never properly showcased. Small upgrades, a quality coffee maker, art from local galleries, plants that thrived under my newly consistent care, transformed the space from merely functional to genuinely personal. Ryan's life had undergone even more dramatic changes. His new apartment, shared with a coworker and the coworker's cousin, was half the size of his previous luxury unit and located in a working-class neighborhood far from downtown. It lacked the amenities he had considered essential before. Yet, when I finally visited after multiple invitations, I noticed something unexpected. It was clean, organized, and contained furnishings he had actually purchased himself, including a second-hand dining table he had proudly refinished. His retail job had indeed led to a promotion: shift supervisor with responsibility for inventory management and new hire training. "Not my dream career," he admitted over coffee at a cafe midway between our apartments, "but it pays the bills and I'm good at it. Regional manager says there's potential for advancement if I stick with it." That coffee meeting represented our first one-on-one conversation since the birthday confrontation, arranged cautiously through text messages. We had agreed to meet on neutral ground. away from Mom's mediating or inflammatory presence. "I owe you an apology," Ryan said after initial awkward small talk. "A big one." He traced the rim of his mug with one finger, clearly rehearsing words that didn't come easily. "I took advantage of your generosity for years. Worse, I took it for granted like it was something I was entitled to." The admission hung between us, more meaningful for being unprompted. "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious about his evolution. "Reality," he laughed, without humor. "Nothing teaches priorities like having your electricity shut off in January or eating ramen for 2 weeks straight because you spent grocery money on concert tickets." He shook his head. "The financial literacy class helped too. Did you know credit cards charge 24% interest?" I had no idea. "I might have mentioned that once or twice," I said, allowing a small smile. "Yeah, well, I wasn't listening before." His expression grew serious again. The hardest part wasn't even the money stuff. It was realizing how I'd behaved, who I'd become. Not someone I'm proud of. Mom had struggled more with the new family dynamic. She still made occasional attempts to restore the old patterns, suggesting I help out Ryan with larger purchases or cover family gifts since you can afford it. Each time, I maintained the boundaries Dr. Coleman had helped me establish. Kind but firm refusals without lengthy justifications or apologies. "She'll adjust eventually," Uncle James assured me during lunches we had made a regular occurrence after his unexpected support. "Your mother invested too heavily in the story of Ryan as the special one needing protection. Changing that narrative takes time." Thanksgiving marked the first major holiday under the new family arrangement. Instead of my handling everything as usual, we created a potluck system where everyone contributed according to their means. Ryan brought rolls and wine, modest but proportionate to his budget. Mom supplied the turkey but accepted others' contributions for sides and desserts. The tension never fully disappeared, but beneath it ran a current of healthier interaction. Ryan surprised everyone by bringing a thoughtful gift. Photo frames containing childhood pictures he had found and duplicated, one for each family member. The cost was minimal, but the effort substantial, exactly the opposite of his previous approach to gifts. My therapy sessions with Dr. Coleman had evolved from crisis management to deeper work on underlying family patterns. "The dynamic you described is classic," she explained during one particularly insightful session. "You were cast as the capable one, the responsible one, which seems like a compliment until you realize it means you're never allowed vulnerability or support. Meanwhile, Ryan was cast as perpetually needy, which seems like getting the better deal until you realize it infantilizes him and prevents growth." Her insights helped me understand that my enabling wasn't just financial. It was emotional too. By constantly solving Ryan's problems, I had participated in keeping him dependent, even as I resented that dependence. "Helping isn't always helping" became our session mantra. A reminder that true support sometimes meant stepping back. Perhaps the most surprising outcome was my newfound comfort in saying no without guilt or extensive explanation. From declining optional work projects that didn't advance my goals to refusing social obligations that drained rather than energized me. Establishing boundaries with Ryan had inadvertently created a template for healthier limits in all areas of my life. Dating, which I had put on indefinite hold during years of financial strain, re-entered my life unexpectedly. Michael, a client's brother introduced at a charity event, asked me to dinner after we discovered shared interests in hiking and obscure documentaries. Our third date included a frank discussion of my recent family drama. A conversation that would have mortified me months earlier, but now felt like an important test of compatibility. "Boundaries aren't just good, they're necessary," he said, impressing me with his immediate understanding. "My sister went through something similar with our cousin. The most loving thing she did was stop solving his problems." The most profound realization came when observing Ryan's gradual transformation. His financial hardship, while painful in the short term, had catalyzed a period of growth that my protection had previously prevented. He developed budgeting skills, a work ethic, and a resilience that no amount of advice from me could have instilled. The brother who was slowly emerging from this difficult period was more grounded, more capable, and paradoxically, closer to the person I had always hoped he could become. "I'm thinking about community college classes," he mentioned during our most recent lunch. "Business management. The company has tuition assistance if I maintain full-time status. The quiet pride in his voice when discussing his own achievements was entirely different from his previous bravado. As my next birthday approached, Ryan called with an unexpected proposal. "I want to take you to dinner," he said. "Nothing fancy like last year. Just Brady's Grill on Elmwood. Their burgers are great." He hesitated before adding, "It's within my budget." The gesture brought tears to my eyes, not because of the modest restaurant choice, but because it represented a fundamental shift in our relationship. For the first time, he was offering what he could actually afford, rather than empty promises he couldn't keep. The journey from resentment to healthy boundaries hadn't been linear or easy. There were still difficult family gatherings, uncomfortable conversations, and occasional relapses into old patterns. Mom still sometimes referred to me as selfish when I maintained financial boundaries. But beneath the challenges ran a current of authenticity that had been missing for years. Our relationships were slowly rebuilding, based on genuine connection rather than financial dependency. The deepest lesson wasn't ultimately about money at all, but about the courage required to redefine family dynamics on healthier terms. Love, I had learned, didn't always mean endless sacrifice or financial rescue. Sometimes it meant standing firm while someone you cared about faced necessary struggles. Sometimes the most generous gift you could offer was refusing to give what ultimately harmed both the giver and the receiver. As I looked toward my 33rd birthday, I realized that what had seemed like a devastating ending, that painful confrontation over melting candles, was actually a beginning. A beginning for Ryan, for me, and for our family's future. The relationship we were slowly rebuilding might be different from what it was before, but it was being constructed on something far more sustainable than one-sided sacrifice. Have you ever found yourself needing to establish difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? How did you find the courage to finally stand up for yourself? Share your experiences below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop solving their problems and allow them the space to grow through their own challenges. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength in your own journey toward healthier relationships.